What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch, and today we're going to be breaking down the specific contexts when pros see it useful to use a hybrid type character like Soldier in the support slot. You might be saying to yourself, Soldier is not a support. How dare you say this blasphemous language, FREEDO? Of course, that isn't the point. A hybrid could fill both positions potentially, whereas the DPS only has one job. If you have any kind of extra utility, turrets, crowd control, healing, disable, whatever you can think of, that can go into the support slot, lowering your team healing but increasing your team's ability to do something else. And in the case of Soldier, compromising with a bit of the healing power, but increasing your range damage and overall firepower of your team. We'll go over examples of Envious later, but the most interesting usage of Soldier in the support slot came from this lineup from Eunited on King's Row. The reason I like this build is because it's a particularly well-designed team comp to be able to deal with many standard defending strategies on King's Row, where teams turtle up in a phalanx death ball and sometimes can seem unmovable. Bazooka Puppies looks completely taken aback from this, and isn't even defending from where you would consider the standard position in the back left corner. They let Junkrat have the hotel, and it's just a big crossfire. They frag out, and they win the point pretty easily, but I want to compare to how you could envision this comp to play against the famous South Korean defense. Because if you remember, in the video that I made breaking down this comp, where they all are basically huddled back in a corner, safe behind their own Junkrat spam, they control the hotel, they get tons of value from their healing, they charge up their Zarya, cycle out point presence, so you can just never really remove them from defending successfully out of that corner. Well, this new Eunited firing squad comp, which does a thing that I thought would counter the Phalanx death ball in the corner, which is mass ranged damage with damage amp. Our team comp is built to sort of slowly walk across the map, find the engagement, and just spam damage into it. And as long as we don't get picked off, which shouldn't be too hard to do, we got a big old shield and enough damage sources that we can cycle our HP pools. As long as anyone doesn't lose their own duel, you basically will win the war of attrition because you just simply have more damage coming out of the support position especially. And typically you can't run a combo like Junkrat Pharah because it just feels too unreliable. Now it's more reliable now with the double mine for sure, but think of the ramifications of this strat, especially when you think about Mercy being as powerful as she is. This type of really slow team comp, well, one, it's undiveable. You got way too much damage. Double mine, Soldier can't really be dove. He's got a healing station to keep everybody alive. The amount of sheer damage that you would get put onto you if you try to make a engagement onto this comp would be bad. And if you try to play a death ball in the back and don't engage at all, you're not going to win the range damage battle either. You kind of have to get pickoffs on this comp. But Mercy's got the res. It's just a really strong way to play King's Row. Soldier provides slightly less healing than a Lucio does based on the cooldown. It's half the radius and less healing per second, but it's not so much less healing that you feel like you can't play this comp, because really you're not looking for your tanks to over-engage in this comp. You're looking for all your range damage sources to find value, which is very easy to do with the double splash damage Pharah Junkrat combo on King's Row, because there's not places to hide, really. Like, you can accidentally hit things on King's Row. The corridors are so tight that it's just going to deny a lot of space. And the other big benefit is that if you are allowed to use Soldier to heal up your tanks, it's a ton of ult charge. I mean, it's just like charging EMP off healing your dive tanks, and this way you can heal your death ball tanks with Soldier's healing station. The two tanks in the lineup have a bit of a difficult job, obviously, because you don't have the more powerful healing, you don't have the speed boost and aura healing from Lucio always by your side to make your job easier and let you be more aggressive. Instead, the Zarya and Rein sort of just hold their positions. Rein can't over-engage, really. There's no bailing him out other than rezzing him nowadays, of course. But more or less, he's just standing his ground, keeping his team alive. Zarya is going to be charging up Grav, which is the main purpose, I think, for picking her. Grav obviously is the best ultimate in the game right now. And when you have Barrage or Riptire to follow up on it, you're pretty much guaranteed a team fight whenever you have Grav. My only issue is I think some teams might struggle to replicate this success, because if they can exploit the openings to focus down the tank somehow, there isn't a lot of healing to keep them up. The only problem is there's just so much damage coming at you that good luck trying to do that as well. I'm not exactly sure what the counter is to this. other than maybe Widow picking off the Pharah, because there is no direct answer to a Widow in this comp. If for whatever reason they struggled keeping the Zarya alive, which is the more greedy pick in my opinion, greedy as in a stronger ultimate, more powerful when actualized, but the more stable pick I think actually is Roadhog, who can supplement the lower team healing, because he more or less heals himself, and he kind of doubles down on your range damage. The other option is even scarier. You could put an Orisa in the off-tank slot, and you have double barrier riding the cart. Yeah, this comp's scary, guys. Really hard to deal with on King's Row. Bazooka Puppies eventually finds the answer against United's firing squad comp, and United goes back to a standard comp in order to close out the map. The Puppies exploit two areas of weakness. The comp doesn't have a direct answer to the verticality and dual capability of Genji, nor the range damage threat of Widow. It really just takes Pharah out of the sky, because the comp has to play too slow, basically. The firing squad comp is a direct counter, I think, to dive comp on King's Row, as well as a death ball behind a Junkrat phalanx comp. But the even superior range damage of Widowmaker, I think, is pretty good to be able to whittle them down, at least on this map. But this isn't the only example we're going to break down today, because of course Envious has been running this for quite a long time. Even back when they were playing at Apex, it was a mainstay for them to put Harry Hook on the Soldier 76 instead of his standard Lucio. Most common on the map Numbani because of its high ground and its ability to split and take advantage of ranged engagements, as opposed to the balling up death ball, you can't dive a style comp that you set up on King's Row with just overwhelming ranged power. Envious really likes to do the multiple threat, almost deathmatch crossfire style comp, where they set up their soldier on the significant high ground with their Ana, and he plays bodyguard for the Ana, as well as adding in some ranged damage lethality, more so than you would get from the Lucio, dropping obviously some of the healing power. But since so many of the characters that Envious is running is rather self-sustaining, meaning that they don't need Lucio's speed boost to get around, as long as they play disciplined enough, they can lose the advantage that they would get from speed boost and gain the advantage in ranged crossfire. A crossfire, of course, is when you have multiple players on the same team looking at the same point of contact from different places. So in this scenario, we have Effect, who plays cleanup duty underneath, weaving in and out of the traffic. This happens in matchmaking games all the time, exploiting your ability to flank inside of the high ground around Gibraltar's first point. And then in this instance, they're running the buffed Junkrat on the high ground as well. Most other times they run Taimu on the Sombra, actually, which is going to give a little bit extra healing to the tanks, as well as provide a little bit of a safe haven for the flankers to zip about, Taimu and Effect on the Tracer included. And this method of engaging is sort of polar opposite to the Death Ball style of using Soldier as the support slot, because it relies on incredibly skilled players in the back line to create a pincer engage, basically, because how do you deal with Harry Hook on the high ground when you have Effect buzzing around in the back, and the best tracers in the world are basically unkillable? So the second you look away, they come in to punish, and Effect doesn't necessarily have to be dealing the damage, quote unquote, because Harry Hook from range deals easy damage, free damage, you might say. And the minute you look away from the Tracer, well, she comes in, and you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place at all times when they engage kind of perfectly, right? They have to have the coordination for the tanks to jump in together when they're deciding to commit, and otherwise they sort of poke and prod. And with multiple damage sources shooting at once, standard dive comp has a big problem dealing with this, because it's actually more stable. Whereas this split crossfire comp is definitely less stable, more vulnerable, but also more powerful when played right. So dive comp tries to move in to find the engagement on it and just gets shredded, basically. How do you counter it? Well, the answers to this strategy have actually developed quite a bit. Originally, when Envious ran this, it seemed like they would almost always feel dominant. But interestingly enough, a really strong counter to this type of defense is, again, Widowmaker, which is weird because we're going to talk about Widowmaker countering a flanker. Not so much that Widow is strong at fighting the flanker, but the long line of sight that Widow can have denies the farming capabilities, pretty much the sight line, similar to like keeping far out of the sky. It kind of keeps the flankers out of your back line, and they would have to focus the Widowmaker, but that also drags them so far out of the fight that they're not really useful. And it kind of comes down to like a skill matchup. Like if that Widow hits any shot at all, this team comp kind of crumbles. either picking off the flanker or the soldier or Ana. But you also could think a really skilled McCree, Roadhog, or Doomfist can kind of stabilize the backline and make that Tracer and or Sombra threat think twice when they're making these pincer engages on you. Any wonky support swap, whether it's Torb, Sombra, Soldier, whatever, it's always a bit greedy in nature that requires the enemy team a bigger commitment beyond the meta in order to counter, and sort of asks the enemy team, show us what you got on those heroes that are going to counter us. Because if you don't, your normal strategies, dive comp, whatever, is just going to get split. You don't have enough range damage, you don't have enough flexibility. We control everything. All your base art belong to us. Not to mention when played correctly, the soldier sights in the high ground at any point can be devastating. Now, of course, I probably should have devoted more time to talking about the biggest weakness of this comp is that when Envious runs it, they don't have the Mercy, so they have no defensive ultimates at all. But that kind of goes into it being a greedier comp, right? They're not going to let you just waltz in and get a really clean ultimate fight engage. They're all spread out anyway. It's not like you're going to grab something really key and get high value ultimates like you're going to need to do. They're not even looking to defend against that type of thing. Their positioning defends against it alone. So the Mercy is more required in the Deathball comp anyway to have some sort of answer to ultimates. And on a side note, part of the strength of this from Envious is that Chipsajin must be one of the most stable defensive Ana players in the world. If you say Jehong has the best mechanics, and I do think that's true, I think Chipsajin must be the smartest Ana there is, because almost no Ana seems as comfortable playing in the solo healer Ana type playstyle. I don't get to see his POV nearly enough. I'm sure I could make an entire guide on him alone when we get a replay system. He doesn't sleep Genjis as much as Jehong does, but he's very reliable at sleeping Winstons, but also seemingly being a ghost in the team fight. Like the enemy doesn't even either have time because the threats of Envious are too strong or they can't get past them. It's hard for me to really decipher what the answer is. It's either his team playing really well or Chips playing really well, because he just doesn't die oftentimes in these setups. Really good at avoiding the damage, which is my favorite Ana playstyle personally, so I'm even more so gushing over it. But this video has gone on far too long. We're going to end it here. That's been it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. If you found any of it useful, please leave a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. If you haven't already, please subscribe because we upload each and every day, so you're gonna wanna hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description, you can check out our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes, and also, link to the description is our Destiny 2 channel. Faction loot just came out on that game, and we'll be covering that. Check it out by clicking the link. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.